Now, look, I'm not going to go into massive detail here because you must have been living under a rock if you've not heard the news today that Donald Trump announced while he had Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, with him at the White House that he was somehow going to take control of Gaza. He was going to own Gaza and rebuild it. We can get into the details of that later, but here he was at a presser today.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
IKEA is already applying for the contract. He went on to say that other Middle Eastern nations are actually on board with this proposal.
You have to learn from history. You can't keep doing the same mistake over and over again. Gaza is a hellhole right now. It was before the bombing started, frankly, and we're going to give people a chance to live in a beautiful community that's safe and secure. And I think you're going to see a tremendous outflowing of support. I can tell you, I spoke to other leaders of countries in the Middle East, and they love the idea. They say it would really bring stability, and what we need is stability.
The Riviera of the Middle East is what Trump says he can deliver to Gaza. It seems a bit far-fetched, but so is a lot of the stuff Trump says, and sometimes he manages to deliver and sometimes he doesn't. What I don't think is in question here is the fact that Hamas cannot continue to rule in Gaza if there is to be any sort of peace in the Middle East, in that particular region, of course, between Gaza and Israel. The question is how exactly you manage to move Hamas on. What Trump seems to be suggesting here is that in some way the US takes control of the land, they disperse people and they rebuild it. Benjamin Netanyahu spoke about the fact that we cannot continue to have Hamas there today.
We can't leave Hamas there because Hamas will continue the battle to destroy Israel. They'll do, you know, when in this temporary ceasefire, one of their leaders comes out, you know what he says? We're going to do October 7th again, except we'll do it bigger. So obviously, you can't talk about peace neither with Hamas or in the Middle East if this, toxic, murderous organization is left standing. Any more that you could make peace in Europe after World War II if the Nazi regime was left standing and the Nazi army was left standing. You want a different future? You got to knock out the people who want to destroy you and destroy peace. That's what we're going to do.
Now, look, my analysis is much the same as Paul Murray's was just an hour ago. It's not going to happen. Michael Shoebridge explained exactly why with Chris Kenny earlier today.
So I don't think it's going to happen because 2 million Palestinians aren't going to happily leave Gaza, and the Arab states and Egypt are not going to welcome them in while Donald Trump turns the Gaza territory into some economic nirvana. Well, he's talking about America taking an ownership stake, an ownership position is the quote from him. And he's talking about the Palestinians not wanting to be there anymore because it's been destroyed and being happy to be somewhere else. And he even hoped that the King of Jordan and the general in Egypt would open their hearts and their lands to Palestinians. That is not going to happen. None of the Arab states, nor Egypt, welcomed Palestinians during this war. They kept their borders closed.
And I think on that count, he is right. I mean, it is such a difficult idea that you're going to get other Middle Eastern nations to take on the Palestinian people so that the US can somehow come in and take the place. Surely what Trump is playing at here is some kind of bargaining chip. This is not a literal, the US is going to somehow take Gaza and rebuild it, because it would take literally decades in order to achieve that. And by some means, you would actually have to achieve taking the land. And you're not just going to disperse Palestinian people overnight and tell them that this land now belongs to the US. You'd have to send troops in there. You'd have to fight a war on the ground. And something tells me Trump would avoid that if he could.
What do you think, Liz? Oh, you don't want to share your thought? I thought this was absolute. I mean, the only thing worse than watching, I should say, the only thing more entertaining than watching this ridiculous announcement today was watching conservative commentators try to defend it. My ears are still bleeding. It went something like, okay, so we're going to expel 1.8 million Gazans. We're just going to force Jordan and Egypt to take them because stuff their sovereignty as well. I mean, while we're just grabbing a piece of land in the Middle East, why not? They can take them, and then we're just going to do whatever we want with the land. It literally sounds like the textbook definition of ethnic cleansing a territory, and they're just like, well, ignore that bit. My question is, why can't you just topple this evil government, Hamas, like you have toppled countless other governments, most recently Syria's, for the 5th time, like you always do? Project Timber Sycamore, funded by the US to the tune of $1 billion. It got rid of the Assad regime because it had one objective, and that was to fund and arm terrorists in Syria to get rid of the government. Worked like a charm again. Why can't you do the same with Hamas? Why does this come down to we literally have to empty the entire territory? And when he was asked, like, oh, well, how are you going to get rid of the people? And the people who have left, can they come back? Trump belligerently answered, why would they want to come back? It's terrible there now. He says while he sits next to the guy who's blown up 60% of the infrastructure, grinning like a Cheshire cat. Yeah, it's pretty bad, but these people will not want to just be like, oh yeah, okay, build us some homes in Jordan or Egypt and we'll just clear out and let you guys have your way. By the way, the reason why Jordan and Egypt haven't taken these Palestinians in, it's not for the reasons that most people seem to insinuate, which is, oh, they're just such terrible people, nobody wants them. No, these countries don't want to do Israel's bidding. They're like, look, if you want that area cleared out, we are not going to help you take over the Gaza Strip. You want it, you can do it, but we're not doing your bidding. Many of these countries already have massive swathes of refugees from this conflict already, and they're absolutely not taking any more than we would.